Welcome to The Details with Elliott, Connie, and Adam Frower. This is a podcast where we examine the intersection between solution-focused brief therapy and current topics going on in the world. And we do this because we genuinely want the world to be a better place. So enjoy and come examine the details with us. I think of 2020 in two different ways. I can't help but think of all of the turmoil, the unexpected obstacles that we faced in this year. You know what I mean? Like all of the things that you see about memes of 2020 and how difficult and of a struggle 2020 was. But I also, I'm going to look back on this year and I'm going to be intentional about trying to remember some of the positive things that happened, just because that's who I am. I don't want to just only think about the negative things. And of course, 2020 has provided us with lots of opportunity to think about the negative things. But it's also a year where multiple of our long-term goals and even dreams came true. And one of them was the launch of this podcast. We've been thinking about creating this podcast for a very, very long time. And then in 2020, it actually happened. And I remember talking to a member of our team, Helen, who does all of our creative digital stuff. And she sent me a text message, what do you think of this image? And that image is what you guys see as the details kind of logo, the picture of me and you that she drew. I don't know if people know this, but she drew that. And I remember getting that and realizing oh my gosh, we did it. We have accomplished this thing that we've been talking about for so long, right? I mean, it's such a cool journey. Adam, you remember that?
Yeah, it really is a cool journey. And I think with so many things, and I think that this is true for the podcast, there's kind of dreams that you have, and there's a part of you that's always kind of hoping that they become a reality. But there's also kind of that hidden, what if it never becomes a reality? And I think that with the podcast, it was always kind of, because we had talked about it for so long, it was always one of those things where it's what if it doesn't become a reality? But I think you're right. In 2020, circumstances changed and we just had more time and more opportunities. And sometimes you need those breaks from reality in order to kind of get back to what's really important to you.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things I'm proud of about this podcast, and to me, it's almost like divine intervention almost, right? You and I have always talked about wanting to impact the world in a positive way and wanting to make a difference in people's lives in a positive way. And if there's one thing that I hope this podcast did was give people a space to listen and reflect during such a tumultuous year. So I'm actually proud of the fact that this is the year where it came true, because I actually think this is the year where conversations like what we've had throughout season one were most needed. You know what I mean? I'm proud that in the middle of this stormy waters that we were doing our very best to bring about inspiration and a bit of hope during such a trying time.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I think you're right. We're constantly kind of thinking about how do we take the principles of solution-focused therapy that, emphasize things like hope and emphasize looking at the very best of people. And I think we are constantly trying to say, how do we take that to as many people as we possibly can? And this podcast is one avenue that we've tried to do that with. And I think you're right. I think this particular year is probably the perfect year for us to have launched this, just because there were so many challenging things about this year that if we could have provided at least some perspective or thoughts or hope, or even kind of seeing the best in people, just like those principles of solution-focused therapy, I think this is the hope of why we do this.
Yeah, even if we could provide some smiles. When we began to do this, I remember having conversation with you about we're going to have the hard conversations. We're not going to shy away from whatever it was that 2020 brought us. And it brought us a lot. But Adam, two things. I want to say thank you to you for you coming along this journey and being willing to engage in real serious and in certain cases uncomfortable conversations. And I want to say thank you to the listeners and all of you who provided us support and just engaged with us during this first iteration of our podcast. Now, we're wrapping up season one. This is the last final episode in season 1 as we go into the holiday season and turn around into the new year. And then the new year, we're going to come back. You guys have given this journey life. It's only real because people listen to it. You know what I mean? Like, us making it isn't what makes it real. It's the fact that people listen to it. And I just want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for being listeners.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, really. And I think, as we kind of sit here at the end of season 1, I think back on the responses that I've heard, and that as people have reached out to tell me what their thoughts were from the various episodes, I can't say thank you enough for listening, but for engaging, for reaching out, for providing feedback on what you think and how you would respond to certain situations. And I've had a couple of people say, the way that you two said things is exactly what I wanted to say, but I couldn't figure out how to put words to. And I think it's such a touching experience to have somebody kind of validate the work that you do and express that it was meaningful to them. Really, the only fitting thing to do for this last episode of the season is just to express gratitude and say, thank you for engaging. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making this something that's viable.
Right. And the number one thing that people talk to me about, in addition to what you said, because you're right, Adam, like, people would say, you guys articulated, that point about the election or about the racial upheaval or about coronavirus in a way that I hadn't had the courage to say or hadn't thought about clearly. But the other thing that people talked about, and this is the message I want to leave people with, in addition to being so filled with gratitude, is people talked about the dynamic between you and I. And the one thing I want to leave people with, what you see between me and Adam is real. Adam and I both have talked for a long time about wanting to be an example on what people who are different can accomplish. This is real. The dynamic you see between Adam and I, it is real, and it has been there for 10 years. There's just something about this relationship that has produced a lot of significant things in our personal and professional lives. But I think what I want you guys to take away from this is how it is an example of what can happen when we stop being afraid of differences and we recognize what makes us different is exactly what makes us strong. I can't really articulate how it happened, Adam. Like, I don't know why you or our differences never scared each other. In fact, from almost the very beginning, it was very, and I hate to use the word collaborative because I feel like that word is overused and just overplayed, but it was just so complementary, right? Like, in areas where you're Batman, I somehow just fit right in as your Robin. And in areas where I'm Batman, you just fit right in as my Robin. I don't know how that happened so naturally, but it did. And for all of you listening, I hope what you got from watching the dynamic and the interaction and the chemistry between Adam and I is, I hope that you saw an example that race, socioeconomic status, different cultures and backgrounds just don't matter when you focus on what you can achieve with the strength each person brings into the relationship.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And you said it really well, right? You said when I'm Batman, you're Robin. When you're Batman, I'm Robin. And I think that one of the things that makes that possible too, and I think this is probably one of the keys, is that I feel completely validated by you, and I hope you feel completely validated by me. I think that one of the ways that we have been able to reach that kind of like co-validation is, I don't try to change you or who you are, and you don't try to change me and who I am. You're right. It's those differences. It's not that we tolerate the difference. It's that we completely appreciate the difference. There are times where you do something or you make a decision and I have to say, I don't understand what you're doing. Like, I need you to walk me through. Usually it's around something like social media, right? Where I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why does that matter? And you laugh at me and then you explain it to me and then I get it. On the flip side, there are things around research or, random things. We'll be writing a paper and you'll be like, now, why are we doing it like this? And I'll just explain it to you and then you get it and then we move on. In that complete acceptance of the differences, there's also a mutual respect of, there are times where you teach me and there are times where I teach you. And I think if we could go into relationships with a willingness to learn and a willingness to teach. That I think that helps us to overcome differences. I think sometimes we get stubborn and we're like, I don't want to teach you what I do or how I do it. And so that creates a division. There are other times where somebody's really willing to teach, but the other person is not willing to listen. And that creates a divide. If either one of us took a stance that was, I'm not going to share or I'm not going to listen, this would quickly fall apart.
I think that's very, very true. I sit here right now and I'm just puzzled. It's almost weird to say that it wasn't really done or on purpose. It was just done organically and authentically. But now that we're here and we're 10 years in and all the things we've accomplished and all the things that we're planning, I hope everybody listening hears an example that what makes us different is also what makes us great. If you can be strong enough to accept the differences. And like Adam said, learn to learn from each other. I'm a different and better person because Adam has shared his culture and his family and his faith and his brotherhood with me. I hope Adam feels the same. I recognize now that part of how we got here is because of my ability to learn and Adam, your ability to learn. I can't think of how I would be or who I would be as a person if not for those gifts. But I hope everybody listening sees that and sees, look at these two guys who literally on the surface have nothing in common, yet look at what they're able to create.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's the other thing that I hope to convey to the listeners is, and it's combining that gratitude, just so grateful that you would spend time with us. But I also want to just say thank you for letting us grow with you, right? That I know that there are times where this podcast could have been different. We could have said things in a different way, right? There are things that we could do differently, but that wasn't the feedback that we got, that everybody just was patient as we learned, as we grew into this process as well. And so in some sense, that same willingness that we've had for each other to let the others learn and grow and be taught. I just want to express gratitude for you letting us do that through this process, because this is new to us. And I hope it's, again, I hope it's useful. I hope it's been valuable to people, but I really appreciate that the feedback that we've been getting is positive, helpful feedback. And that helps us to grow and get better at this process.
So everyone, happy holidays, be safe. Understand the different environment that we're in. Be kind to yourself and to the people around you, and we will see you in the new year.
Have a wonderful new year, and can't wait to do season 2 with you.